Hello everybody, and welcome to this thing. Today I'm going to be reading to you a fanfiction of Johnny Joestar and Gyro from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Part 7, Steel Ball Run. Now kids, I'm going to tell you, if you're a little kid watching this, I'd recommend getting your rear end out of here. Or there might be some unfortunate consequences. Alright, let's get started, shall we? Ever since their encounter with the dinosaurs, Johnny insisted one keep watch whilst the other slept. Gyro insisted that it was completely unnecessary, that no one, not even Dio, would attack at night. But Johnny was not easily wavered. He said Dio was incredibly dangerous and incapable of anything, and so, to give his friend some peace of mind, he agreed to the arrangement. Sitting alone in the dark with nothing to do but play with his teddy bear, he was adorable, Gyro spent a lot of time thinking, mostly about his father, and fiddling with whatever he could get his hands on. However, tonight was particularly chilly, even though they were in the middle of the desert. He'd heard that desert nights could get cold. So, although it wasn't the wisest decision, he decided to light a fire to keep warm. Gathered up whatever wood they had with them and placed them close enough to Johnny to keep him warm as well, but not enough to overheat him. Thought his friend might appreciate the warmth. The sparks from the rocks he rubbed together shot into the wooden straw he had gathered and slowly spread into beautiful flame, dimly lighting the smallest area around them, and the beautiful, round, perky shape of... was that Johnny's ass? Now that he thought of it, he never really looked at it properly. Not that he was really looking at it to begin with. It was probably because Johnny was always sitting, for obvious reasons, that Gyro had not noticed it before. Rather, he was surprised he hadn't seen it at all after all the time they had spent together. It was large, to say the least. It wasn't the type of ass that became shapeless as it grew in size, no. The steed's beautiful buns were perfectly spherical. The curve of his ass was so perfect to look like he could be part of the spiral. Absolutely symmetrical. Johnny turned in his sleep. His ass responded to the sudden movement, bouncing up and down. He jiggled. So it was soft. Soft and round and ready to be cut in his hands and squeezed. Johnny stopped his stream of thought right there. There was no way he considered going over and groping his friend's ass. More importantly, why had he been suddenly fixated on Johnny's ass to begin with? Johnny was, first and foremost, a man. He had a dick. With an ass like that, did it really matter? Of course it mattered. Johnny was a guy. A dude. Wanting to go over another man's ass was bizarre as fuck. There was no way Gyro, the son of the respectable Zapelli family, was interested in caressing another man's behind, right? Gyro grasped his head, trying to force the thought out of his brain, but he swore that ass was pulling him in, begging to be touched by his hands. It would probably ripple beautifully if he spun the steel ball lightly over it. Not that it was totally thinking about trying that, of course. Aside from it being another guy's ass, this was his friend he was thinking about. Not only would that be incredibly rude, but also going up to someone's behind, grabbing someone's behind is something a pervert would do. And Gyro Zapelli was not a pervert. Well, not unless he got the other person's permission, but this is not the case. There was no way he would do that to his friend. He probably would realize the second Gyro placed his hand on that beautiful sphere of light. Or not. Johnny was paraplegic, so technically, and only speaking technically here, if Gyro decided to, per se, touch his butt a little bit, or a lot of it, he would have no idea because he wouldn't feel it. But of course, Gyro would not do such a vile thing. That would be taking advantage of his friend's disability, and he would have to live the rest of his life with the guilt and secret he would have to take to his grave. Yet, he could live the rest of his life without touching the best ass he's ever seen? Could he allow himself to live such a life filled with regret, having the best butt in the world within reach, but never even touched it because he was too much of a coward to take a chance? No. Gyro Zapelli was no coward. Johnny's ass glowed in the firelight, seducing Gyro with its planetary essence, pulling him in like gravity. He approached it slowly, as if it were a deer, and wished not to startle it with his sudden movements. The closer he got, the more it pulled him in. How had Johnny kept this from him so long? He felt almost betrayed Johnny and not told him that he had this wonder hidden between his upper body and his saddle. It was too good to be true. Hold on a second. I got it, burp. There we go. He reached for the jiggling mass with anticipation. Just as his hand was about to touch the cloth-covered cheeks, he wavered. Could he really do this to his friend? He stared at his ass, his heart tightening in his chest. Couldn't really let this chance go. He would only touch it for 5 seconds, he swore, and then he would forget about it. He reached out and placed his hand on Johnny's butt. Ooh, the ass did not disappoint, not one bit. With only a touch, his fingers seemed to sink into the soft, warm flesh. He placed his other hand on the other cheek, cupping both lightly in his hand. The cheeks fit perfectly in his hands. It was as if that ass had come to existence for the sole purpose of being touched by his hands. He grasped it more firmly, palming the flesh and squishing it between his fingers. Johnny's ass reacted to the pressure he put upon it, bouncing into Gyro's touch. It was beautiful, soft, perky. Everything Gyro's had ever wanted in an ass was literally in his grasp. He bit his lip. Those no way 5 seconds were enough to enjoy the sounds of the fullest. Whatever happened, it was his guilt to bear. He squeezed the flesh, pushing the soft flesh up, letting it go to feel the jiggle in his hands. It was so unbelievably good to touch. Pressing his fingers against the softness of Johnny's ass was addicting. Oh God, he could even feel himself getting a bit hard. He felt as if he would never be able to stop until suddenly he heard the most terrifying sound he could have heard at the moment. Gyro, what the fuck do you think you're doing? He froze in place, hand still on his friend's ass, as Johnny Joe started to push his chest off the ground and turned to shoot a furious glare in Gyro's direction. He swore he could see fire in his eyes, the type of fire in his eyes that only appeared when Johnny was about to kill a man. He gulped, quickly lifting his hands from his friend's ass and placing them in the air where Johnny could see them. God, he was acting as if he got caught by the police. Hi, Johnny, he said carefully. Maybe way too carefully. You see, there was this giant cicada on your ass and I was trying to get it off you. Gyro, he said. His voice tinged in fury. He turned around, facing his terrified friend. There was no way he could know, right? It wasn't like he could feel anything lower than his waist, right? It does not take that long to kill a buck. Gyro bit his lip. How long had he been awake for? Well, it kept bouncing around and... Gyro, Johnny said, sounding angrier than before. When trying to murder an insect, keeping your hands in one place and squeezing at the flesh is not the way to go about it. Wait, how did he know what he was doing with his hands? Wasn't Johnny paraplegic? How could he have felt anything? You felt that? He stuttered. Gyro's pride was plummeting, taking a dive straight into hell where it would be incinerated and cease to exist. Johnny reached up, grabbing the collar by the shirt collar. You thought you would get away with it, he yelled. Because I'm paraplegic? Is that why, Gyro? I never expect something like this from you. Guilt welled up in Gyro's stomach. He was right, it was a pretty awful thing to do. But what hurt the most more wasn't the guilt, but the disappointment in Johnny's voice. He knew Johnny thought very highly of him, and he hated to disappoint that image. I'm really sorry, man, he said. I really don't have an excuse. And it wasn't right of me to think it was okay because I thought I could have kept it to myself. Johnny looked away. You're not forgiven yet, asshole, he said. Gyro sighed in relief. Johnny was going to forgive him. That's all the reassurance he needed. But first, he really needed to ask him something. So, you can feel something, he asked. He sat in front of Johnny, giving him his undivided attention. Oh, he said, didn't I tell you? Ever since I had the right arm, it's almost as if my nervous system starting up again. I can't move anything, but I can sometimes feel when something touches me above my knees. I see, he said. Suddenly, Gyro got an idea. A terrible, awful idea. Honestly, he deserved a slap in the face for even coming up with such an idea. But Johnny already knew that Gyro had been touching his butt, so it was worth a shot. Hey, Johnny, he said, flashing his usual mischievous smile. What was it, Gyro? He said bitterly. Do you want to test how much you can feel? He said. Johnny stared at him, unsure of whether Gyro was suggesting what he thought he was suggesting. He raised an eyebrow questioningly. What do you mean by that? He asked. He placed his hands on both of Johnny's shoulders and looked him straight in the eye to show him how serious this was. Listen, Johnny, this is my proposal. To see how well your nervous system is, how about I touch your ass for you? Johnny pushed Gyro away immediately. Gyro, what the fuck? Are you insane? He said. Look, he said. This race has us both pent up. So this is a way to get both of us off and everybody wins. What do you say? Johnny laughed. No fucking way, he said. Gyro sighed. Okay, I'll make a new proposal. If you let me touch your ass, I will suck your dick for you. Johnny stared at him, at first showing obvious signs of rejection, but his gaze began to soften. You serious? He asked. You are that desperate? Let me explain to you the gravity of the situation, Johnny, Gyro said. And I'm being really honest with you, so listen up. Your ass. And I don't think you've ever even seen your ass. Well, of course you haven't, it's behind you. There's no way you've seen it, but your ass is the best ass I have ever seen. Johnny snorted. He placed his hands over his mouth and withheld laughter to no avail. Tears were streaming down his cheeks because of how hard he was laughing. Fine, Gyro had to admit it was a bit ridiculous, but if he could have a guilt-free opportunity to go into town on that ass, he was going to do what he could do to take it. Gyro, you're insane, he said. Did the desert heat get to your brain? Oh my god. Johnny, I'm serious, he complained. It took a while for Johnny to regain his composure. It took a lot of failed attempts at taking deep breaths, actually. Okay, Johnny said. Do whatever you want. Really? Gyro said. Yeah, hurry up before I change my mind, you idiot, he said. Gyro could feel his cheeks flush with excitement. Thank you so much, Johnny. I swear it'll feel good, he said. He grabbed Johnny by the waist and turned him around carefully so that beautiful ass was once again in his sight. It was so sly, that ass, hiding from him in plain sight all this time. But no more. Now Gyro could finally have his way with it. He started to pull down Johnny's pants. Gyro, wait, Johnny protested. What are you doing? I can't, Gyro asked. I mean, if it makes you uncomfortable, I could always... Go on, Johnny said, his voice a bit muffled. It's fine, you're gonna suck my dick anyway. Gyro pulled down Johnny's pants to his knees and revealed that ass, that once again, failed to disappoint. The skin, untouched by the sun, was flawless, slightly lighter than the rest of his skin, of course. It looked so pure and purky. He wanted to desperately take a bite out of it and bury his face between the cheeks. Dear God, this is way better than boobs. And bite that ass he did. Johnny jumped slightly at the sudden contact Gyro's grills with his ass, but he didn't make a sound. Gyro pressed his fingers against Johnny's skin. It was incredibly soft. Surprisingly soft for an ass that had been beaten by Saddle day in and day out. It was amazing that it didn't have any bruises. He parted his lips to that soft skin, nipping and biting between kisses, as if it deserved proper worship, while simultaneously massaging the flesh with his hands. So soft, so bouncy, so perfect. And only Gyro Sapelli was privileged enough to leave his mark. He was so absorbed in his appreciation of the beautiful butt that one of his bites caused Johnny to moan he was startled. So he was feeling it. The sudden knowledge that Johnny was feeling good made Gyro even more enthusiastic. He spread his cheeks and nestled his face in between them, only to let go and have them squish his face. Ah, heaven. This, however, attracted another moan from Johnny. Now Gyro was intrigued. What did make Johnny feel good? And importantly, why did the sounds that Johnny made make him feel more aroused than being buried in a beautiful ass? This was definitely something that had to be solved tonight. Hence Gyro's decision to suddenly lick Johnny's asshole. He spread Johnny's cheeks so that he could get to work. Slowly, he ran his tongue over the skin surrounding the hole in a spiral until his tongue dipped into the asshole. Johnny's body shivered in response. His reaction went straight to Gyro's groin. Christ, this is getting out of hand, but there's no way Gyro could stop now. He ran his tongue over Johnny's asshole again, this time with more intent. He changed pace, applied pressure, and then licked it softly. All the while, Johnny was shaking, and every once in a while, a whimper or the start of a moan would escape his lips. And each time, he would scramble to cover it up. It only made Gyro want to push him farther. He inserted his tongue into Johnny's ass, moving in circles until he could feel the muscles loosen up. Gyro, Johnny cried out. Gyro stopped. Johnny had called his name out plenty of times before, but never had realized he heard his name like this. He never had a man said his name in such a fashion, and Gyro Sapelli realized in that moment what an arousing sound it was. Suddenly, he felt a burning desire not only for Johnny's beautiful ass, but Johnny, the person. He wanted all of him, every inch of skin, the fire in his eyes, every sound that escaped his lips. He pulled back from Johnny's ass, grabbing him by the waist and flipped him over. It was too fast for Johnny to struggle. Gyro, what the fuck are you doing? He said breathily. First thing John noticed was the expression on Johnny's face. Even in the dim light of the fire, he could see his face completely flushed and his lips were wet and his eyes were moist, and he was nothing short of absolutely stunning. Johnny, he whispered. He reached for the younger man and pulled him towards him, and pulled his lips up to his own and pressed them together softly. He felt the heat from Johnny's lips and saliva upon his own. There was no doubt in Gyro's mind that these lips belonged to another man, but he desired them all the same. Gyro, he said, looking away, did you really just kiss me after licking my ass? Let me kiss you again, he said. I'll do whatever you want, he replied. He continued to look away from Gyro. He wasn't going to let that fly. He took Johnny's face in his hands and brought his lips upon his once more, this time without holding back. Gave Johnny no time to react before he pried his lips open, sliding his tongue into his mouth and tangling it with his, which responded in kind. In no time, Johnny's arms were wrapped around Gyro's neck, and the homogeneous moans vibrated on his lips, leaving him tingling with more desire than before. Johnny's fingers slid down Gyro's back, pressing them against his body and tugging at his shirt as if he didn't care if it was being torn off as it came off. Shameless, Gyro thought about it with a smile dancing on his lips. This is a side of Johnny and Gyro had never seen before. It was simply a side he wanted to see more of. Gyro repeatedly broke the kiss and removed his shirt. He swore he caught Johnny staring at his figure for a second before he turned his gaze away. Eyebrows furrowed and face glowing pink. He had no idea Johnny could act this cute. He leaned in, tugging Johnny's shirt off in the process, pressing his lips against his once again. Johnny's tongue was twisting and turning in his mouth before he even knew it. The kiss grew sloppy, passionate, needy. Johnny knocked the hat off his head and ran his fingers through his hair. Gyro was tracing his fingers down Johnny's chest until they settled on the nipple. Johnny responded to the request with a slow moan in his back, which once again went straight to his cock. Gyro withdrew his lips from Johnny's and started planting kisses on his neck and chest, stopping to lick and bite at his nipples. Johnny had one hand tangled in Gyro's long golden hair and another covering his mouth in an attempt to muffle his moans. Gyro looked up at Johnny. He was a gorgeous mess, his blue eyes glittering in the firelight, his beanie half off his head, his nipples erect, pink. But it was beyond him why he insisted on looking away, on shielding him from him. He wanted to see Johnny completely undone before him. He wanted to be open to how he was feeling. Hey Johnny, he said as his lips grazed the line where his partner's pubic hair began. You can yell all you want. We're in the middle of the desert. Nobody's gonna hear you. Johnny grimaced. Fuck you, Gyro, he said gruffly. I intend to, he said. He gets the head of Johnny's already very hard cock. Johnny gasped. What? He said, surprised. You said do what you want, and not keeping my promise, he said. He lifted the head of Johnny's cock, who this time did not hold back a moan. Can I... Fuck you, I mean. Do I have to say it a second time? Johnny huffed. He looked away from Gyro again. Gyro smiled and flicked Johnny's cock at his mouth. Johnny shivered and Gyro could hear what he had been moaned between his teeth and his lower lip. God, he was sexy. He bobbed his head up and down Johnny's cock, swirling his tongue around the length. Every once in a while he would suck the tip before bobbing his head up and down again. Johnny was biting his hand to stop him from making any noise, to no avail. His arousal was evident in the murmurs that escaped the confines of his fingers. Johnny, he said, I want to hear your voice. Stop hiding from me. Johnny looked at him, his blue eyes wide and glassy. He shook his head, his face completely flushed. Gyro reached up and tore Johnny's hand from his face. His lips were moist and inviting. Gyro, he whined breathily. Gyro swallowed. If Johnny called his name like this, he might lose what little self-control he had left. Lacing his finger with Johnny's, he went back to attending Johnny's cock, which was already oozing with pre-cum. He licked it off, and continued to bob his head up and down in length, now faster. It seemed as though Johnny got the message that he was no longer trying to cover up his moaning. He kept getting louder and louder until he called Gyro's name once more, his eyes scrambling to express exactly what he knew was coming. He tasted the salt of Johnny's cum on his tongue, and he was careful not to swallow. He was going to need this. He carefully withdrew himself from Johnny's shrinking cock and carefully spits his fluids into his hand, flipping Johnny over with the other. There it is, that beautiful ass. He spends a few seconds just taking it in again before unbuckling his pants and reaching for one of his steel balls. Johnny, who was looking over his shoulder to see whatever the fuck Gyro is doing, stared at him with wide eyes. Gyro, what are you doing with that steel ball? I'm not fucking you with the steel ball if that's what you're worried about, he said. He leaned in to give that gorgeous bubbly ass a sink in his teeth and again. It was like fresh baked bread, but better. That's what my dick is for. He smiled at Johnny, who looked very concerned. You expect that to fit in my ass, he said, gesturing at Gyro's dick with his eyes. Steel ball, he said with a smile. Johnny, it won't hurt, I promise. Whatever, I trust you, he said with a huff as he turned away. In fact, it was a procedure he had done before, but it was for completely different reasons. Johnny was right. Given the current tension of his rectum muscles, it was the only thing he might have been able to get in was a finger. And to loosen up with fingers, he needed patience and a lot of moist, slippery fluids, both of which he did not have enough of. With his right hand, he spun the steel ball into Johnny's coccyx. Vibrations of the steel ball would loosen the muscles enough for him to stick it in. He spread Johnny's beautiful ass to take a look at his handiwork. It was already loosening up. He stopped the spin and made sure that the muscles didn't relax too much. There would be unfortunate consequences. And spread the fluids he had in his hand over the hole at his cock. Johnny, I'm going in, he said, pressing the head of the entrance. Tell me if you feel any discomfort. Johnny chuckled. Sure thing, Dr. Zeppi. He finished his sentence with a moan. Johnny's inside tightened around the cock. It had been so long since Gyro had done anything like this, and the warmth felt so good. Are you okay? Does it hurt? He asked Johnny as he leaned over to plant a kiss on his partner's back. Johnny sighed. Hey Gyro, he said breathily. Didn't you say you were gonna fuck me? Johnny's words burned through his body, and he placed a hand on Johnny's ass and another on his waist to keep him steady. He pulled out until only the head was inside Johnny and slammed himself into Johnny's ass. Johnny yelled in response. Johnny, he started. Gyro again, he commanded. He complied. He thrust into Johnny again and again. With every thrust, Johnny cried out in pleasure, whispering his name between breaths and the words more and harder dancing in his lips. Every time he went into Johnny's fluffy ass acted like a cushion and jiggled as Gyro moved in and out of the hole. The sight of him made him even more aroused. He wanted to see Johnny loosen up, but there was no way he'd expected something like this. It was exhilarating. It was nothing like doing it to any woman you had before. The unspoken need for courtesy, the unspoken rules by which relations between man and woman abide by didn't exist here. This was honest. This was a relationship built from living through so much together and trusting each other, and now they had given their bodies to each other. Intimacy like this had never existed for Gyro Zappelli, whose sworn duty was to be unfeeling. There were definitely feelings here. The feelings of this man were far beyond friendship. With his cock buried up into the hilt into Johnny's ass, Gyro realized it had been a long time since he began to love Johnny to the start. It was just some realization that brought into the need to not look at Johnny's ass, but his face. Need to look at those blue eyes. Kiss those lips again. He pulled out. Gyro, what the fuck? Johnny screeched at him. He flipped Johnny over. His face was flushed, saliva dripping out from the corner of his mouth, and his pupil was almost completely swallowed by sky blue irises. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. He brought his fingers up to his cheek and caressed it gently. I just really want to see your face, he said. Johnny tried to turn away, but Johnny caught it with both of his hands and turned it to face him. He still averted his gaze. Johnny, he said. I know this is a terrible time for me to tell you this, but I really need you to look at me when I say it. Johnny looked at him, eyes wide and slightly confused. Gyro swallowed. It was now or never. Why, you still have the courage to tell him. Johnny, I love you, he said. Johnny's face turned bright red for a second, and he looked like he wanted to sink into the ground and disappear. But he smiled at Gyro and laughed. Tell me that before you decide to fuck me, asshole, he said. He pulled Gyro in and gave him a soft pick on the lips. Now finish what you started, damn it. And Gyro laughed. Nobody ever made this feel uncomfortable, and he doubted anyone else in the world. This man in his arms loved him so much. He leaned back into Johnny, pressing his lips against while pushing his cock back into him. Johnny gasped in his mouth. The warmth of Johnny's insides drew a moan out of him too. Their tongues danced around each other wildly as Gyro pummeled himself into the partner until Johnny broke away from Gyro and screamed his name as he came all over their chests. Gyro came shortly after. Gyro, he said, curled up against his bare chest. Did you really mean what you said back then? That I love you? Yeah, I'm pretty serious, he said. Does it bother you? Johnny traced circles on Gyro's chest. He pressed himself closer. No, he said softly. I'm glad you were serious. So you love me too, then? He said excitedly. He turned to his Johnny until their faces were inches away from each other. Come on, say that you love me too. Johnny grimaced. Like hell, I'm telling you that, he said. Come on, Johnny, he begged. I've said it twice. You gotta at least say it once. Johnny sighed and looked away. It was obvious he was weak to Gyro's charm. I love you too, asshole, he muttered under his breath. Gyro smiled and leaned in to kiss Johnny when he suddenly heard a clunk from behind him. Both of them bolted up to take a look. A small dinosaur ran past them. It meant one thing. Dio was nearby. Dio! Johnny cried out, enraged. Bloody hell. He heard a familiar voice from the direction where the dinosaur had come from. Out from behind a small sand dune emerged a familiar foe. He scowled at them, his piercing eyes burning gold from the light of the fire. How long have you been there? Johnny said. Long enough, he spat. Absolutely disgusting, both of you. Johnny, who was now bright red, stared at Gyro. So they had seen what they did. Well, it wasn't like he was going to tell anyone. After all, his half-hard cock was hanging out of his pants. Assuming he hadn't noticed, Diego turned around and ran the opposite direction, disappearing into the darkness. "Hey, Dio!" Gyro shouted after him. "Next time, zip up your pants after you're done jacking off!"